Hi everyone, welcome to Mrs. Chin's class. Okay, in the last two videos we went over how to find the equation of parabola and a cubic. Now today we're going to find out the equation for trig functions, the sine and the cosine graph. Okay, so here are the sine graph and the cosine graph. Right, what is the difference? So this one starts from 0 going up, down, and finish over here, whereas this one, it starts above, coming down, and finishes up there. Okay, these are sine and the cosine graph. Actually, these graphs goes on and on and on. So this is only one cycle of a sine graph, and this is only one cycle of a cosine graph. So for sine graph, yeah, as you can see, this is one cycle, but that goes up endlessly to the right and left. Just like this, okay? Same thing with cosine. What you see over here is just one cycle of it. One cycle, I just cut the one cycle of it, but actually this goes on and on, positive infinite, negative infinite, to both sides. Yep, just like this. Okay, so what do you see? Those two looks very similar. Yep, this graph, if you move this way, a little bit this way, then it's going to be cosine. Or if you move the cosine curve, that one, this part, a little bit this way, then it's going to be sine. So sine and cosine graph is basically the same graph, but has a horizontal translation. Okay, so how are we going to define the sine and the cosine? Right, the difference will be from the x and y from 0. Okay, if I start with a half a circle, it's not really a half a circle, but I'm just going to say it. Okay, if it's start with a semicircle, then it's sine, whereas this one, it's not a semicircle, it's quarter, 1/4. Yeah, if I do like, it looks like a quarter of a circle, isn't it? Yep, then we're going to assume it's a cosine, right? Okay, and then I have a half a circle followed by another half a circle. Those two make a full circle, and I'm going to stop there. And whatever the value it is, it's a period of the cycle, okay, of the sine curve. So later in the activities, you'll see numbers, but say up till here is like 5, then the period is 5. If the number you see over here at the end of making a full circle is 300, then the period is 300, and so on. Okay, likewise for the cosine. Okay, this is 1/4 of a circle, this is another quarter of a circle, and this part is another quarter of a circle, and also this one is another quarter of a circle. 1/4, 1/4, 1/4, 1/4, 1, 2, 3, 4 makes a full circle, isn't it? So once it makes a full circle, at the end, whatever the value over here is a period. Okay. So these two are the original equation for sine and cosine, and both of them have 360 period. Okay, as you see, the axis is in terms of degrees, so one full circle ends at 360 degrees, so 360 is a period for sine. And also this one full circle, so at 360 degrees it's one full period. It's a period for the cosine curve as well. So both of them has both owns 360 as their period. Okay, so if this is 360 degrees, half of this is what? Yeah, 180 degrees. So half of 180 degrees, this one is what? 90. So 90 is 180. Another 90 will be 270 degrees. and another 90 will be a full period, which is 360. So if you know a value, for example, if you know 90, you can just double it 4 times to get the period. If you know the period, you can halve it to find out the rest of the values. Okay, same thing with cosine. That's 1 full period, so half of it will be over here. Again, it's going to be half of 360, it's 180. So over here, half of this one will be over here, 90, and so on. That will be 270 degrees. Okay. Right, there is another common thing, which is amplitude. Amplitude is the distance between the midline and the maximum and the minimum point. So where is the midline? There you go. The dotted line, the dashed line in green, this is the midline. So from there to the maximum point is called amplitude. Okay, so those two are amplitude, and it should be the same distance from the midline. Okay, and for sine and cosine, both of them, it's 1, and that should be -1. So amplitude is both 1 for sine and cosine, likewise amplitude, and the midline should be in the middle, so it should keep the same distance. There you go, this is my midline, and that's going to be my amplitude. And for the original function of cosine, that value over here will always be 1. So therefore, this distance and that value should be -1. Okay, so this point should be -1, 180, -1 as its coordinate. Alright, so are we clear? Right, both sine and cosine has its period of 360 degrees and amplitude of 1. Okay, so this is the translated version of the sine and the cosine. A and A represents the amplitude. Okay, so if the distance is 3, then that value will be 3. Right, plus C on each side. Again, this is vertical translation. It's representing the midline for the sine and cosine curve. Okay. Right, so later you'll see the midline translate up or down. So this whole graph will go up by a certain number, down by a certain number. So wherever the midline is, that's the C value. Okay, so if the midline is at 3, then the C would be +3. If the midline is down in like -10, then it should be -10 over here. Okay, and lastly B. Okay, my B value, here's a calculation how to find the B value. It's always 360 divided by whatever the period is of that question. So there you go. In this case, my full period is 360. My 1 full period is 360. So 360 divided by 360 should be just 1, right? So that should be 1. Okay, in the calculator, make sure you put big bracket outside, B followed by small bracket and X. Otherwise, you'll not find the value. And make sure your calculator setting is in degrees, because over here we are talking in terms of degrees. Okay, so now let's go over and do some question. Okay, here's an example. Right, first of all, number 1, you need to find out where the midline is. Okay, find out the midline. Well done. Okay, this is the midline. So midline is at -5. So what's my C value? Yep, your C value should be -5. Okay. Alright, then now you need to distinguish whether it's sine or cosine. So is it starting with a half a circle or quarter of a circle? It's starting with a half a circle. So what is it? Yep, It's sine, isn't it? Okay, so therefore my equation would be like this, and I know that my C value is -5. Okay, like this. And what else? What can I find out? What's my A value? Yep, from the midline to the maximum point, what's the distance here? It's 2, isn't it? 2, the distance is 2. From 5 to 7, also distance is 2. So my amplitude is 2. Easy. Okay, now you tell me what the period is. Yep, half a circle and a half a circle. It ends here, so that's why my one full period. Remember, it's going on and on and on. Okay, I just draw the one full cycle for you, and one full cycle ends here, which 12 should be my period, right? So what was the calculation for B? 360 divided by the period, so 360 divided by 12, what is it? It's 30, isn't it? So I can write 30 there, and this should be my full solution, the equation for the graph. Okay, so this is how you do it. Okay, how about this one? What's it? What is it? Is it cosine or sine? Okay, in order to figure out, you need to find out the midline. Where is the midline? Yep, that's correct. Midline is at 1. So basically it means my C value is 1. Okay, now I'm going to find out whether it's sine or cosine. So do you see a semicircle or a quarter of a circle? What's this one? It's only a quarter of a circle, right? So it's a cosine. Okay, but you have a look. Is this looking exactly the same with this one? What's the difference? This one starts with a quarter of a circle from the top, whereas this one has at the bottom. Okay, so it's a flipped upside down cos curve. So this is a normal cos curve, but if this one is flipped through, if it's reflected through the x-axis, then it's going to look like this. Okay, like this, then it's a negative cosine x. So in this equation, it should be negative cosine. So my A value in front, I should add negative in front of it. Alright, then let's talk about the amplitude. What's the amplitude? What's the distance from the midline to the minimum, midline to the maximum? Yep, the distance is 4. From there to there, the distance is 4. Okay, so my amplitude A value should be 4. My A is equal to 4. Okay, so I can write the equation like this. My A is 4, and it's flipped upside down, so I manually put negative in front. I do not know my B yet, but my C, the midline, is +1. Okay, so B, it's again 360 over period. What is my full period? One full circle ends at 40, right? So my period is 40. So there you go, 360 divided by my one period, 40 is 9. So my B value should be 9, and that's going to be my final equation of this curve. Okay, so whenever you see the graph flipped through the x-axis, this is a negative cosine, and same with sine. If it starts with a negative semicircle going down and up like that, then it's going to be a negative sine. Okay, so we learnt how to find the equation for sine and cosine, which is very similar. Okay, I hope this video helped. Okay, so in the next video, we're gonna talk about how to do prenumerals. Okay, then I'll see you in the next lesson. Bye bye.